Okay, it is 7:01, and I'm calling this meeting of the San Leandro City Council to order. It is Monday, February 2nd, 2026. Please join me in our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we've got on our next item, please take roll, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Aguilar.
Present.
Councilmember Azevedo.
Present.
Councilmember Bolt.
Present.
Councilmember Simon.
Present.
Vice Mayor Viveros Walton.
Present.
Councilmember Bowen.
Present.
And Mayor Gonzalez.
Present. The City of San Leandro conducts orderly meetings. So let's try that again. The City of San Leandro conducts orderly meetings to fulfill its mandate. Discriminatory statements or conduct that would potentially violate the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964 and or the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, California Penal Code Sections 403 or 415 are per se disruptive to a meeting and will not be tolerated. Please see the City Council Handbook and the City Council Meeting Rules of Decorum for more information. Madam Clerk, your announcement, please.
If you would like to make a public comment during the meeting, you can do so in person or via Zoom. If you are present at the meeting, please complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk before the item is presented. If you wish to participate in public comment via Zoom, you can use the raise your hand tool when the item is called. During the public comment session, speakers will be invited to speak and will have a set time to share their comments. A countdown timer will appear for their convenience, and when the time is up, the microphone will be muted. All raised hands outside of public comment will be lowered to avoid confusion. Once public comment is opened, hands may be raised to speak. There will be a 30-minute window for public comments, which will take place under Item 7, Public Comments, as per the published agenda. After this time is up, the council will proceed with the rest of the meeting's agenda. If you have not had the opportunity to speak during the initial 30-minute period, there will be another chance to do so after Item 12, City Council Reports.
At this point in time, I do not believe we had a closed session today. Therefore, there is no report from closed session. But we do have recognitions. Today, we will proclaim February 2026 as Black History Month here in the city of San Leandro. Tiana, would you please come up? Where are you?
Hello. Thank you so much.
Just a little bit of intro. So we know that Tiana's a longtime resident of San Leandro. So we're especially grateful that you're here today, a local business owner for the DC Dance Center, which empowers community youth through inclusive arts education. And I know you've been involved in all sorts of activities supporting our Cherry Festival. I think you even did Leadership San Leandro, is that right? So, I mean, actively involved in our community, and so thank you for all that you do. And thank you for being here to receive this. So now I'll just read the proclamation and give you a chance to say a few words. Whereas African Americans have made significant political contributions to the artistic, economic, educational, literary, political, religious, scientific, technological advancements, and many more in the United States. And whereas the observance of Black History Month calls our attention to the continued need for community action to end racism, to extend mercy, and develop equity for everyone. And whereas we honor the men and women of the African American descent, including past generations who advocated for the ending of slavery and the enactment of civil rights laws, going on to educators who have answered free people's call for a free mind, and to ongoing efforts to press towards a brighter and more equitable future for everyone. And whereas the city of San Leandro continues to work toward becoming an ever more inclusive community in which all residents are respected and recognized for their contributions to our community, our state, our country, and the world, regardless of the color of their skin. Now, therefore, I, Juan Gonzalez III, Mayor of the City of San Leandro, do hereby proclaim February 2026 as Black History Month in the City of San Leandro, and encourage the public to join us in commemorating this important occasion in recognition of the numerous contributions made by Black and African American communities here locally, nationally, and globally.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I am deeply honored. Thank you to the City of San Leandro and Mayor Juan Gonzalez. I am truly happy to be here today. I grew up at DC Dance Center at the age of 5. I stepped in and I was welcomed with warm arms under the director, Debbie Cabral. And I grew up dancing all the way up until high school. And she instilled the love of dance and the passion of dance, and she saw in me leadership. And as I grew older, she put me in a mentorship and a leadership position, and I am truly thankful for her. In 2021, I bought the business, and I've been running the business since then. And just like Miss Debbie, I want to keep DC Dance Center a warm and embracing studio and community for everyone, Black and brown students. DC Dance Center has always stood in diversity and inclusion, and I want to keep that going. So thank you so much to the City of San Leandro for recognizing me. I've been putting in a lot of work and a lot of effort into the studio and into the community, and I love giving back. I'm very passionate about youth and the work that I do. So again, thank you so much to the city and to the mayor, and I'm going to keep this proclamation forever. And again, I am truly honored. I'm glad I can represent Black people and Black youth, and I am a voice for the City of San Leandro. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
At this point, we will continue with our consent calendar. Are there any requests by council members to pull an item? If not, I will go to public comment. Seeing none, let's go to public comment on the consent calendar.
Mayor, we've received one comment card on the consent calendar, and there's one hand raised on Zoom.
Please proceed. In person.
The in-person commenter is Mike McGuire.
Hi there. I'm referring more to item 5A than the other ones on the consent calendar. People point out it costs something to set up a rent stabilization program, and I just wanted to give some comparative figures for what we do, we as individuals and we as a city do spend money on. One guesstimate for what the yearly rent stabilization fees would be is $50 each per unit.
Can you hold on for just a second? I'm just trying to make sure that your comment is aligned to the item. So just give me just 1 second, please. Well, I just want to make sure that you're focused purely on the registry software, correct?
Right.
Okay, just keep the comment focused to the registry software.
Okay, okay. All right, so anyway, some just comparisons to things we can spend money on as individuals or the city. If we are paying, if we're paying the average rent in San Leandro, we are paying $19,200 a year. That's $1,600 a month times 12. In terms of other things the city could be doing, even if we borrowed money to get the program started for software, the only year where, I'm trying to edit as I go along. I'm fumbling here. We are talking about money to buy software. We do spend, however, $33 million on the fire department, $14 million for other city computer operations. Of the IT budget, some $9.8 million is for services, and IT annually pays out double the total cost of the proposed rent stabilization software, just as category other. I'm sure there are good things in that category, but just the miscellaneous IT spends a lot of money. And then there's other city departments, 2.7 million for HR, 5.7 million for recreation. We consider that money pretty well spent. So I'm just saying, keep what we're spending to get rent stabilization going, and the software in particular, in context. Thank you.
Thank you. That is our only in-person commenter.
Okay, so we are closing public comment in person, and we will open public comment online.
The first online speaker is Alvaro Ramos.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to comment on item 5B. And I wanted to start by saying that I definitely want the driving experience and the pedestrian experience to be improved just as much as the next person. And I think that rectangular rapid flashing beacons help. So I want to be clear that I'm not speaking against that. But I am speaking in opposition to the pedestrian hybrid beacons, which, as far as I know, are also known as high intensity activated crosswalk or hawk signals. These specific beacons, I don't find them intuitive and I find them very confusing. I'll give you an example. I was driving in Berkeley on Ashby Avenue up to Highway 13. There is one hawk signal on that road. I was in my car. I had the sun visor to block the sun. And then it also blocked the visibility of the hawk signal, unfortunately. And then once I saw the signal instructions, they were poor because they were too small and they were hard to read. And I had my glasses on. And I think that as a driver trying to drive safely to avoid accidents, I found that the signal provided poor communication of what action I needed to do when I got to the intersection. And I think that these are reasons that make hawk signals ineffective and dangerous. Uh, the design of our signals and signs calls into question the human factor in engineering of traffic management. Drivers and pedestrians have to make quick decision making. Therefore, people need to have shorter reaction times. So my advice for council and for public works is to keep it simple and use the most reliable and traditional methods that have been proven to prevent accidents. Use a traditional stop sign or a traffic signal. Red, yellow, green is much preferable than hawk signals.
Thank you. Your time has elapsed. The next speaker is Douglas Spalding.
Good evening, council members. I'd like to speak on items 5A and 5D. Let's start with the easy one, 5D. Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez, for filling the two empty at-large seats on the Arts, Library, and Culture Commission, as well as the Community Police Review Board. The CPRB seat has been really not filled for months and months, and it's important that we have full commissions and that we get the benefit of citizen input. I also want to talk about the registry program for a moment. This is the foundation of the larger housing stabilization program we're in the midst of implementing. And while there are many estimates of 7,000 plus renters and whatnot, we don't have solid data. So this is really important information that will help us to refine the program as it goes forward. The one thing I am wondering about is, it's supposed to be self-reporting. Landlords, report, and there's a penalty if you do not. But I think it might be even more effective if there was some kind of tenant portal where tenant could, just make a call and say, hey, I want to make sure that my landlord is registered in the program, so that my unit that I'm renting has the benefit of the rent stabilization ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Willow.
Hi, this is Willow Idlewild. I am speaking today from my capacity as the president of Estadio Estates. We want to express our gratitude for putting the crosswalk in at Arbor and Dutton. As a car-free advocate, I would love to see even more radical ways of highlighting pedestrians and bicyclists, but this is really going to make it much easier for us going to and from the Safeway and to and from some of the businesses at Dutton and Bancroft. So just wanted to express some appreciation. That's it from me. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rachel Radin.
Hello, thank you so much for letting me speak today. My name is Rachel Radin, and I too, as the previous caller said, I'm very excited about the potential for these crosswalks to improve pedestrian and driver safety. To speak to the earlier gentleman's comment regarding hawk lights specifically, I will say that as a pedestrian who walks frequently around San Leandro, the hawk light that's on Davis Street, I have, without fail, never had an incident of any type of safety concern. Cars are always stopping, very respectful. I find it's a really ideal type of situation, particularly when crossing a street like East 14th that's extremely busy. Even with crosswalks that are unlit, people very rarely, if ever, stop. So I just want to reiterate my excitement for the possibility of these hawk lights coming about. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mayor, there are no more raised hands online.
So we will close public comment online, come back to the council to see if there's any discussion or a motion. Councilmember Aguilar.
I'd like to move the consent calendar.
I've got a motion from Councilmember Aguilar. Councilmember Azevedo.
I'd like to second it.
So we've got a motion and a second. No discussion, please vote.
All the votes are in, and the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. This time we go to our sixth item. I do not believe we have any city manager or city attorney reports, but I'll turn left, right. That is good. Then let's move on to general public comment. So we're taking public comment on items that you wish to address us on that are not on our agenda. This would not be, do not come and talk about items that are on the agenda. Here we talk about items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of this council, but not agendized today. So at this point in time, how many cards do we have?
Mayor, we've received 3 cards,
Okay. And how many hands online?
2 hands raised.
Thank you. Let's proceed in person.
The first 3 in-person speakers are Karen Silva, Nancy Rafaloff, and Ginny Madsen. Karen, are you here?
Hi, City Council and Mayor. I'm sorry I'm not a polished public speaker. This is on behalf of Councilmember Fred Simon, representing Washington Manor. I'm speaking personally to say that Fred is someone who shows up and does the work. He reads the material, asks thoughtful questions, and genuinely listens to each of his community members. Even when conversations are different or opinions differ, his leadership doesn't make headlines, but builds trust and stability throughout this city. What I admire most about Fred is he is a devoted family man, a neighbor, and an upstanding community member. Whenever I call on him, he answers. He follows up and returns a call and always keeps his word, something I find that doesn't exist very much throughout the council or throughout the city leadership. He treats people with respect, fairness, and a steady moral compass. Those values guide his decisions, and commitment to doing what is right. It's always heartfelt. He speaks from the heart. Public service takes resilience, humility, and a real sense of responsibility to others. He brings that daily. He authentically cares deeply about this community and its residents, and shows that throughout his consistency and his sincerity. And he's one of the few people in this community I find that is extremely sincere. Our city is better because of leaders like Fred. I'm grateful for his service, character, and his continued commitment to this community. And as you can tell, everyone in Washington Manor loves Fred. So I'm just speaking heartfelt how I feel about him. He's an amazing man. So thank you.
Thank you. The next two speakers in the room are Nancy Rafloff and Jenny Madsen.
Go ahead and pull it down just a little. That's fine. There you go. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Fred Simon, I'm talking about Fred Simon, is an honorable and respectful family man. Fred goes out of his way to help his community. This investigation is a witch hunt filled with hearsay, misinformation, and errors in the report. What strikes me the most is you couldn't work out your differences amongst yourselves. You wasted $135,000 with a false report. This clearly is a biased character assassination to a good and honest, caring man, respectful to all. At a recent Oraloma meeting, Sheila Young pointed out a false statement involving her and Fred, which is in your report. Again, it's a shame that the city's complaint resolution procedure couldn't resolve this before it became so costly for the city. I hope the rest of you never have to face this.
Thank you. The next speakers from the room are Jenny Madsen and Lawrence Abbott.
So my name's Jenny Madsen, and this may not start out sounding like I'm talking on topic, but I am. So I've spent several weeks of my life over the past 5 years sitting in Department of Water Resources meetings. There was 3 days of them this week, and hundreds of people came out and spoke about the importance of the science, what the science is telling us, and that we need to keep the flows in the rivers or we will all suffer. This is basically for the Bay Delta plan. And at the end of this, there were a handful of, let's say, paid representatives for nut growers in the southern San Joaquin County, or San Joaquin Valley that were there, who spoke, oh no, we can't do this. But Newsom is very much in favor of the voluntary agreements. He wants to let them figure it out. And the people do not believe this, but all the commissioners stood up there and looked out and said, well, we really can't go with what the people want. We have to do what the politics are telling us. And all I want to say now, because I have a problem with that investigative report, I do not think it was unbiased. But you can fool some of the people all of the time. You can fool all of the people some of the time. But you cannot fool all the people all the time. And you guys need to, the city needs to remember that when they do studies. Because too many, I've done so many in my time in San Leandro, and the questions are just written so that you get the answers you want. And I'm not the only one that thinks this way. So that's why I said that. I hope you guys can stand together because this is important. It's a tough job, but what you're doing is important.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lawrence Abbott.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Lawrence, and mine also might start off sounding like it's not applicable, that it is. So I just wanted to say that I'm a proud union member. I represent my Teamsters Local 70 union on the Alameda Labor Council, the AFL-CIO, and I've been an off and on again political organizer with the Labor Council. And a lot of people don't really know what a union is. A union is just working people standing together. And then, you know, they're standing together for a purpose, for power, for a balance of power with their employer. And the reason I bring that up is because that's sort of at the root of fairness for workers, because employers can be incredibly powerful and workers typically aren't. And I love San Leandro's slogan, a city where kindness matters. Kindness and fairness go together for me. So when I think of renters, first of all, they really do need that balance of power. And when I think of you folks on this board, when I think of fairness and I think of kindness, I think that you guys have the ability to work together. I remember hearing from one of you how important it was for you guys to try to reach consensus on important issues. And I was terribly disappointed at the last city council meeting where it was almost unanimous, but one of the primary people that always talks about working together and reaching consensus voted the opposite way. And I see a similar thing happening now with certain people on this council being picked on. Well, as a political organizer, we vet all the candidates that we support. We've supported 3 candidates here. I've walked door to door with my union, with Teamsters Local 70, with other laborers. We vet them very carefully and make sure there's not a bone of gender bias in these people. And I know what's really going on. It's political. It's terrible. It's the antithesis to fairness. It's the antithesis to kindness. Please, we can do better.
Thank you. That concludes the cards from in the room, Mayor.
So we'll close in-person public comment and move online, please.
The first online speaker is Douglas Spalding.
Good evening, council members. Greeting from Summit Medical Center, where I just set off the alarm because I shifted in my hospital bed. This is my second time in a hospital. On Thursday, I was at San Leandro Hospital after my dog, took me down, tripped me with her tether, and I face planted on the curb of my own sidewalk. And I just wanted to say I am so happy that we still have San Leandro Hospital open in town. And I want to just call attention to the wisdom of the many people who work to keep it open under the aegis of Alameda Health Systems. And that includes, from the very beginning, Stephen Cassidy, and right up to current day, Ed Hernandez. And if you ever have a chance, I was in the emergency room, or if you stay overnight and you talk to the people that work there, you'll find that there's a great pride among people who work at San Leandro Hospital. Second thing is I wanted to just one more time celebrate the commemoration of Stephen Taylor's Sanctity of Life Park last weekend. And it was an amazing event that once again underscored this community that has arisen from the tragedy of Stephen Taylor's death. And especially if you didn't get to stay until like the latter part of it, you know, our own students at the Social Justice Academy of San Leandro High, you know, they really showed out. One of the things about Stephen is he loved music. And so, like, the culture that they brought to the event, both in terms of singing, dancing, and spoken word, and really just their spirit, it was amazing. We're very lucky to live in this community with multiple generations of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Melissa Wong.
Hi there. Good evening. I'm speaking on the investigation into Councilmember Bowen's complaint. I'm aware that public comments are deemed opinions from the public. Concerning this situation, it isn't about opinions. It's about facts or the lack of. More than a few people who are mentioned in the report have publicly refuted statements in it. Many other examples were missing basic research or even logic. A $135,000 investigation heavily leaned on the former city manager, mentioning her 78 times, over 25 more times than the second witness. Yet, if for alleged The conduct would have occurred after November 2024. The city manager had already been settled in Florida with no more official capacity in San Leandro. Actually, half of the witnesses the investigator charged time for had not been in any official San Leandro capacity for at least 1 year, if not more than 2 full years. The investigator already interviewed a dozen witnesses and waited 4 months to interview council member Aguilar and Simon, then went back to the former city manager one last time before ending her interviews. These are the facts you can see in the report. The investigator failed to interview a facilitator that would have witnessed alleged misconduct in an often mentioned planning session, an example of lack of basic research and logic. I am perplexed how the investigation was done to fairly review the allegations and ask the council to make sure you have facts before you take any additional steps. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mimi Dean.
Hi there, this is Mimi Dean, and I serve on the Oro Loma Sanitary District with Councilmember Simon. I have to say that I have known Councilmember Simon for quite a while now, and he is, in the words of Mayor Emeritus Sheila Young, a decent man. I feel like the report that you guys approved and recognized at your last meeting was totally full of innuendo and baseless accusations against not only Simon, but also Aguilar. You know, I don't know how you guys decided that that report was acceptable. You know, when we have someone like Mayor Emeritus Young, saying that she didn't say these things that you guys have in the report, that says a lot to me because I believe Mayor Young. So I just think that you guys need to do a little bit of soul searching here, and you need to realize that, you know, this was not the place for this kind of report. And I hope that you're going to do what's right for our communities, and you're going to take another look at this, and you are going to realize that Fred Simon is a very decent man. And neither he nor Victor Aguilar deserve this kind of treatment from our beautiful city of San Leandro. And I want to say thank you very much. And I concur with Mr. Spalding about the beautiful celebration we had down at the marina for Stephen Taylor. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ed Hernandez.
Hey, good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. On January 13th, I submitted a formal written request asking for clarification and review of the residency and domicile requirements for Serbia on this council. I have not yet received a response. I understand staff may be managing a heavy workload. However, the issue goes directly to the integrity of district-based representation, and the public deserves clarity. The City Council Member Handbook and California Government Code are clear. Council members must reside in the district they represent for the duration of their term. Government Code 244 defines domicile as a place where a person actually lives and intends to remain. And Government Code 36502 requires continued residency and voter registration in district term throughout that term. A council member's primary residence in their district, and mine as well, has been recently sold. That same council member was absent from the recent meeting on rent stabilization, residential rent caps, a major policy decision affecting thousands of residents. And they were also scheduled to participate remotely in the upcoming meeting of an appointed body. None of these facts alone determine eligibility, but together they make it reasonable to ask the city to confirm continued compliance with residency and domicile requirements. I respectfully ask the acting city clerk and city attorney to review the matter and provide guidance to the council and the public whether residency and domicile requirements continue to be met and what process the city follows when their primary residence has been sold. This is not about assumptions or conclusions. It's about transparency, continuity, and public trust. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to accountable governments. Good evening. Good night.
Thank you. That is the last hand we have raised online, Mayor.
So we will close public comment at this point in time, and we'll move on in our agenda. We don't have public hearings or presentations today, and our first item under action items is a second reading to adopt ordinance number 2026-001 to amend the San Leandro Municipal Code to add Chapter 4-46 to establish residential rent stabilization. Community Director, Development Director Tom Liao is here. There you are.
Thank you, Mayor and City
proceed.
Council. So, as the Mayor noted, we are here today for the second reading of the Residential Rent Stabilization Ordinance. Before we get that, I did want to just provide a kind of brief update based on some comments from the first reading. There was a few members of the public mentioning the public noticing and them not receiving that. So I just wanted to address that for you all. As you know, housing protections has been public priority and publicly noted since 2023. Rent registry and rent stabilization have risen to the top of the priority list through the council the last couple of years. But I did at least want to provide you all the assurance from the city side that we have at least maintained a wide and consistent outreach process since and noticing process since 2023. So going back to that time, we have had 7 rules committee meetings. We've been agendized for 7 rules committee meetings. We have been agendized for 8 council meetings. We have had 4 citywide community meetings, and we have had 6 stakeholder-related meetings, particularly for interested parties like the providers and the tenants. And so I wanted to share that with all those public events or those public meetings. Majority have been noticed in bilingually in Spanish and Chinese. We have used our growing and extensive database of providers, tenants, and advocates and individuals throughout all of those meetings. I wanted to also note that we've done flyers and notices that have also been posted both on social media, the City Housing website, at community facilities such as the library and community center, as well as in community service organization locations as well. And I would say in critical junctures throughout this process, we've also gone through the media with press releases and publications in the local paper as well for this item. So I think it's been a very public item. Would also say we did some extensive work, some recommendations on the Rules Committee last summer with some of that outreach to look into areas where Asian and Spanish-speaking populations frequent, such as shopping areas and businesses. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm going to hand that back to the Mayor.
So at this point in time, are there any questions for Director Liao before we go to public comment on this item? Seeing none, let's move to public comment. How many cards do we have and hands raised?
Mayor, we currently have 21 cards submitted, and there are 3 hands raised online.
Okay, let's see. Please, if you're going to speak online, please raise your hand, because if there's only 3, we're going to take those first. 4. This is a call-in for the people online. 5. Okay, last call for people online, because we're going to start with online public comment. Okay, so if you can take a screenshot, and those will be our online public commenters, and please proceed online, then we'll come to the 20-some-odd people in person.
The first online speaker is Douglas Spalding.
Thank you so much. Council members, you're on the verge of a significant and important victory for the working people of San Leandro. Do not delay this decision. Delaying the decision may mean we just never get around to it. And we've come so far, and you have worked so hard, and staff has expertly gotten us to this point. Now, we've been warned by the landlord lobby that you pass it and the sky is falling. We've been told that this ordinance is extreme, that it will have disastrous outcomes, and I want to address those for a moment. There have been many fallacious claims. One is that this rent stabilization ordinance is going to harm those mom and pop landlords. And really, that's kind of undercut by the exemptions in the ordinance itself for the golden duplex, for ADUs, for smaller units. You know, if you got 8 or more units, you're not a mom and pop, you're a business. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being a business, but come on. We've been told that there will be no new construction. And well, that's true, but it's not due to this rent stabilization ordinance. It's due to the high costs of construction all over the place, not just in San Leandro. And we also know that, you know, when construction happens, it's not going to be, you know, beholden to this. That has an exemption to self under the Costa-Hawkins Act. So that one's kind of a straw argument. We've been told that, okay, landlords are going to stop doing maintenance. The units will depreciate in value. They're going to take them off come on, that doesn't make sense either, because they're just devaluing their investments. So please, this is good for the city. Let's
Thank
pass.
you. Your time has elapsed. The next speaker is Gordon Galvin.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Gordon Galvin, and I'm a small housing provider in San Leandro, someone who invests in, maintains, and relies on rental income to keep my property safe and habitable. I support tenant protections, but I'm deeply concerned that this proposed rent control ordinance, particularly the 3% cap or 65% of CPI, could have unintended consequences that actually hurt both tenants and small landlords. Let's talk about what that means in real numbers. According to recent CPI data, US inflation has been running around 2.7% annually. Under your proposed formula, 65% of 2.7 is roughly 1.75%. In simple terms, even if costs go up nearly 3%, a landlord could only increase rent by 1.75%. That may sound modest, but for small housing providers, costs don't rise in neat 2.7% increments. Insurance premiums, property taxes, utility expenses, roofing, plumbing, earthquake retrofitting, pest control. Many of these increases far more than CPI, sometimes double or triple CPI in a single year. So when you factor in maintenance, emergency repairs, city compliance costs, and state laws, the real cost of owning and operating safe housing often exceeds the CPI rate. By locking allowable rent increases by tying them to the 65% of CPI, this ordinance would force landlords to continue absorbing costs year after year. So I'm not here to block protections, but to push for a reasonable compromise. Eliminate the 65% of CPI restriction. That's what the Vice Mayor suggested at the first reading of this, and it didn't get any traction. It didn't get any debate because the city attorney said that.
Thank you, sir. Your time has elapsed.
Okay.
The next speaker is Ava.
Hi, my name is Eva Poon. I was at the previous hearing, and I felt that many of the council members actually disagreed with this 65% of CPI. I'm also a housing provider, and I also am against it. And many of you feel that it's unusually strict to landlords. I urge you to make the right decision, not the easy decision. Yes, you're going to have to pretty much go back to the drawing board, as mentioned by the previous speaker. But I do think that maybe a 5% cap is much easier to calculate for both myself and my tenants, much easier to explain. Many of my tenants are non-English speakers, so this would be much easier to calculate, and it would just be much easier for pretty much everyone involved. The way the ordinance is currently structured, I feel that many housing providers are incentivized to increase the rent as much and as soon as possible before it takes effect in 2027, which is something that I really don't want to do to my tenants. We're a small housing provider, and we've kept our rents low and pretty much haven't increased it in the past couple of years, and we want to continue doing that. But if we lose our ability to increase our rents in the future, then we have no choice but to do that right now. So City Council, please do not pass this ordinance. Please don't hurt my tenants. Please don't hurt my fellow housing providers. And please rewrite this to be much less confusing for everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jim Prola.
Hello, Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I remember last time I told you that it was in the paper that 82% of retired seniors in the Bay Area rely on Social Security as their main source of income. But Social Security percent increases does not actually cover retired seniors' actual cost of living because the rent increases have gone up much higher, and the cost of living increases doesn't measure the pharmaceutical costs and the medical costs that they're going to be subjected to in the next, in fact, in this year and in the next few years. So I think it's important to keep the 65% in there, or the 0.65% in there, along with the 3%, whichever is lower, because the seniors' cost of living is much higher than what is given to them by Social Security. Like I say, the medical care is going to go up by I don't know how many percentages. It's already put a lot of them into positions where they can't afford to even get their medical insurance anymore because that's not measured adequately for seniors and retirees and the Social Security cost of living. I was a small landlord and I know the deductions and the tax breaks you get. And believe me, it's considerable. I think you need to go with what is that you passed the first time. And if it doesn't work, you definitely have an ability to change it later on. So treat the seniors like you would treat your own parents if they were only relying on Social Security. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Alvaro Ramos.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I am again calling in support of the rent stabilization ordinance, and I've been reading the room. There are a few perspectives that I have on it. First, there is prosperity at all costs, even if it means a high cost of living. And the result that we have is high inequality, unbridled growth, and unrestrained productivity. The problem is that hoarding wealth does not circulate in the society. When the economy goes bust, the bottom falls out and the rest goes with it. Society collapses without regulation. And then we've tried the incremental approach. It is not far reaching because it accommodates the market. There is nothing empowering about households making painful choices between, do you pay for housing? Do you pay for healthcare? Do you pay for energy utilities or for food? All of which have increased in price. And that is a failure to invest in the futures of the next generation. Both approaches have failed to satisfy the ambitions of the rich and meet the needs of the poor. And we're living in a cost of living emergency. That's what we're in right now, accelerated by a tyrannical federal government. People without spending power cannot drive market growth. Governments need to deliver resilience so that the market prospers. That's stability to weather the storm. We are here to prevent market failure and to mitigate the negative effects if that happens. Fairness is what this is about. It's about reducing inequality for everyone. In this way, fair housing is stable for property owners and renters. And I feel like for some reason we've forgotten about the tax cuts and the benefit cuts that have come along from the budget bill that we had last year. Those are benefits as well, those tax cuts. That's it.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mimi Dean.
Hey, it's Mimi Dean again, and I'd like to say I agree with the last two speakers, especially about all the benefits that property owners get, when our taxes come around. And also, I'd like to agree with Jim Prola about the whole Social Security thing, right? Because Social Security recipients are not getting increases, these big increases every year. So you guys probably don't know this about me, but I am a little mom and pop landlord. I did not anticipate this happening, but life changes made it happen. And I have a couple of women that have been living with me for a really long time. And I have to say that it's really important to me to have wonderful, good people that live with me. And I know that I could count on them just like they can count on me. I have to say that as a property owner, I feel like I am so lucky, and I don't feel like I need to be greedy and keep asking the people that I live with to keep giving me more and more money. I feel like I'm the one that's getting the asset, right? Like when the mortgage gets paid off, I'm the one that has something tangible that I can touch, that I can call my own, that I can leave to my heirs, right? Like the person that's paying the rent isn't getting those things. They're getting a place to live, but they're not getting some permanent generational wealth that they can pass down. So I think it's really important to remember that us landlords, we're getting some really great stuff. We're having other people help us pay for our property that we will then pass down to our heirs. I would like to say that I'd like the city council to do the right thing and stand by the tenets of San Leandro and promote this rent stabilization ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, that concludes the 6 hands that were raised during the close.
So we're closing public comment online. Please proceed in person.
The first 3 speakers are John Sullivan, Athena Stanford, and Kate Halfon.
Good evening, Mayor Gonzalez and members of the council. I'm John Sullivan, and tonight I'm going to be, wearing 2 hats. Hat number 1 is way back in the 1960s, I lived and worked here in San Leandro as a real estate broker and later a housing provider. I always had a stake in our city. Your actions, voting for extreme rent control, it turns away investors to our city, and we're not able to develop the housing that we really need to be built in San Leandro. And of course, causing real estate tax revenues, the lifeblood of our city, to fall. So it will cause backlash with the voters later on when they realise that. Now, the second hat, I and other providers, housing providers, I know too well that it costs a small fortune to renovate and upgrade our older apartments here in San Leandro. Our apartments were built way back in the 1940s to the 1960s. By your action, depriving us of funds for those older complexes, for remodeling them and so forth, it will eventually lead to some blighted areas if we're not able to do that. Obviously, as happens so often in severe rent control areas, that affects the vibrant housing areas of San Leandro that we're so proud of too. So the bottom line, please pay attention to the long-term effects. To continue this upgrading, etc., we need to hold somewhere towards our state rent control regulations. Dropping maybe down to 5% may work, but we must delay
Sir,
the
your time has elapsed. The next 3 speakers are Athena Stanford, Kate Halfon, and Evelyn Oliveira.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is This is my first time ever at a city council meeting to speak. Sorry. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Athena Stanford, and I am here on behalf of Golden State Trailer Park, located at 1511 150th Avenue. If any of you have ever driven up and down 150th Avenue, you've certainly driven by this property. I'm sorry to say, it is an eyesore. It is certainly not a good mark on our city, and I grew up here, by the way. So I am here to ask you to please reconsider some of the provisions in your rent control ordinance. Specifically, we need to do capital improvements at our park. And if you doubt what I say, feel free to stop by. We have 18 spaces. I believe we're probably the smallest trailer park in the city of San Leandro. We have 18 spaces. Currently 6 are occupied. 5 are paying rent, 1 is not. We desperately need to upgrade the park. We're not able to rent the spaces, so currently our community is suffering by not having this affordable housing. We cannot rent these spaces until we upgrade our electrical, our plumbing, our sewer, new fencing, and paving. So in relation to the maximum on the rent control amount, let me just say that in 8 years, we have only raised our rent $102 in 8 years. We've not had the money to do the upgrading that we desperately wanted to do, and we're now at a critical point. My property owner that I represent, he is losing money. I have his tax return, $7,000 out of his own pocket. He is a low-income immigrant senior. He has no more money.
Thank you. Your time has elapsed. The next 3 speakers are Kate Halfon, Evelyn Oliveira, and Anthony Adesi.
Good evening. My name is Kate Halfon, and I am the broker and owner of Welcome Home Property Management. Thank you for taking the time tonight to hear our concerns. I'm here in opposition to the proposed rent stabilization ordinance because the rent cap is too restrictive and ultimately unsustainable. For over 20 years, I've managed properties for small landlords who typically own just one home or a small multi-unit property. These are not large corporations. They keep rents modest and address issues responsibly as they arise. I've seen firsthand how extreme rent control pushes owners to sell, often removing those homes from the rental market and making the housing shortage worse. For example, we manage a small multi-unit property in Berkeley where tenants pay anywhere from $863 to $2,500 for identical units. With these extreme rent control measures, tenants paying $863 today will still be paying under $1,000 in 2040, an unsustainable model that creates huge disparities. In San Leandro, another small complex saw tenants unable to pay rent for over a year during COVID with no way for the owners to recover those losses. Over 6 years, rent increased just 3.55%, while PG&E rose 12.4%, water 9.7%, and garbage 15.4%, not including taxes or maintenance. Insurance is requiring a much-needed electrical update, and the bid is close to $250,000. Continuing to place the burden on small landlords will only worsen the crisis. People mention generational wealth, but as these older properties pass down to the next generation, the property taxes are reset and their costs increase drastically, and I've seen those children be forced to sell those properties, and they leave the rental market. I encourage you to work with those of us.
Your time has elapsed. The next 3 speakers are Evelyn Oliveira, Anthony Adesi, and Jenny Madsen.
Everybody, good evening. My name is Evelyn Oliveira, and I am a renter. I'm a government employee and a union leader here in the Bay Area. Been living in San Leandro, will be my 30-year anniversary this year. I have followed this process from the beginning, and I'm here to say something simple and important. I believe in you. You did not come into public service for comfort or applause. You came because you understand the leadership means standing for people. Even when the stance is tested by pressure, money, and threats. Right now, the pressure is loud. Lobbyists are skilled at making their interests sound inevitable. Resistance feels risky, but volume is not authority, and money is not morality. Legitimacy comes from ethics, and powers come from resolve. You have already shown both. Every time you stand firm, you strengthen the public's trust. Every time you refuse intimidation, you prove that this council answers to the community and not to fear. Most of the people relying on your courage aren't in this room. They don't have lobbyists. They don't make threats, but they are watching, and they are counting on you all to hold the line where they cannot. Pressure fades, integrity lasts. History doesn't remember who pushed hardest, it remembers who stood steady. So continue without fear. You are not alone. Your ethics are seen. Your resolve matters. Please stand firm. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Anthony Adesi, Jenny Madsen, and Emily Rich.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I actually agree 100% with the previous speaker. I think that this is a big decision that is going to affect the way that San Leandro operates for a very, very long time. I think the easy thing to do would be to continue with the second reading and pass this ordinance in its current form. I think the hard thing to do, which a couple of council members were trying to do last time, would be to stand up and say, hey, we got this far, but it would be tragic to continue with the ordinance in its current form. I see two fatal flaws in this ordinance, one being the start or the base year of 2025. This will become a legal and documentation headache for the city. What about leases that were renewed where tenants agreed for another 12 or 24 months rent to keep their housing stable at maybe higher than the increase that would have been allowed in the ordinance? Who's going to govern that? How is that going to flow through? What about landlords that, like myself, that replaced a roof, all new double pane windows, and added new safety railings so the children don't fall through them last year with an increase that funded that capital improvement? How is that going to be maintained? How are those disputes going to be governed? More importantly, when you have such a strong ordinance put in place, it puts landlords against tenants instead of working together. Today, when a shower has a minor leak, instead of repairing it in the cheapest, most possible way, we replace it. Because we know if we're operating negatively, we can make the money back if we have to. Good landlords are not the problem here. Good tenants aren't the problem here. But the ordinance in its current form will have a lasting effect and probably will be the most important thing you guys pass in your tenure here. So please do the right thing and say, let's revisit this and get it correct.
Thank you. Your time is elapsed. The next three speakers are Jenny Madsen, Emily Rich, and Jimmy Kelly.
So I'm back again. You all know that I've been coming and talking to you about this for as long as you've been on the council in some cases, longer than that, because I've been talking to Tom Leal about this since 2014. I'm stunned that people still haven't read the ordinance. They don't know what this ordinance actually covers. They don't know it doesn't cover mobile homes. I wrote a rather long thing and put it in the e-comment, but I figured it out. There is, regardless of how many units a landlord owns, the difference in annual rent that they will collect if the percentage of CPI is taken out of the RSO is truly negligible. There is simply no reason to amend the rent increase in the rent stabilization ordinance you passed in January 12th. Because look, part part of it is I've been working on this since 2023, really hard, like on a regular basis. But part of it is I see if you push this down the road any farther, it's not going to happen. And I think you all know that. I think you'll lose resolve. I think you'll lose the sense that you're building something. And that would be a mistake because you are building something. I don't know how to point out to landlords that they get to deduct all of the operating expenses for managing, conserving, and maintaining the rental property fully in the year they are incurred. This includes all of the things that they say are going up. The landlords have a great thing, and this ordinance is going to allow them to review and make a request for a fair return on investment, which will be reviewed properly.
The next three speakers are Emily Rich, Jimmy Kelly, and Craig Williams.
Hi, Emily Rich. Rent control in the U.S. started as emergency wartime measures in the 1910s and the 1940s to combat profiteering enabled by housing shortages. These first-generation controls covered roughly 80% of rental housing, strictly froze rents, and were largely abandoned after World War II due to housing booms that eased prices. But in the 1970s, inflation and housing shortages led to a resurgence of rent control in our major cities. Experts agree that developers have failed to create adequate housing for the past 5 decades, causing housing costs to rise precipitously. Given this market failure, many cities have enacted policies that permit inflation-indexed increases, allow landlords to reset rents on vacant units, and permit landlords to apply for exemptions. In 1995, the California legislature, persuaded by the landlord lobby, limited the scope of any rent stabilization in the state. State rent stabilization ordinances must exempt any housing built after 1995, single-family homes and condominiums. As city staff has pointed out, because of this largesse, only about a quarter of San Leandro's rental housing units will even be subject to any ordinance the council enacts. And yet, the landlord lobby claims the sky is falling. Although many landlords and landlord representatives claim they love their tenants and do not raise their rents annually, as staff's presentation showed, median rents in the area have increased by 82% in the last 15 years, while CPI has increased only by 44%. Obviously, somebody has been raising somebody's rent. Please approve the second reading of the proposed ordinance.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Jimmy Kelly, Craig Williams, and Jennifer Rizzo.
Brothers and sisters of the community, of the council and staff, I want to say that in the 20 years since I retired, the rents have eaten up my income. I used to be able to pay my rent with just my retirement from the Postal Service, and over the years, I could pay for the food and utilities. But yet, I did not take my Social Security right away because I didn't want to use that money until I really needed it, and now I do. But even with Social Security, I can't make it. I have to dip into my savings to live here. The problem is rents are out of control. This is not rent control. This is just trying to give us stabilization. I'm a union member. I'm a retired letter carrier, a retired teacher. I also work as a current musician and as a sales rep. I'll probably work till I die, but hopefully in the meantime, I won't have to exhaust my life savings. When I pay my taxes, I get a renter's check, big $50 a year. That's what you get for being a renter. I don't know if any of you are renters, but I bet you get bigger deductions on your income tax. You investors, you'll make your money. You got Prop 13, you got Contra Costa. What do we get? We get $50. Yeah, renters, your deductions, you get your interest deductions, you get all kinds of benefits. Meanwhile, as a tenant, I'm paying off your mortgage. Now, I want to thank the City Council for the almost unanimous decision, with the exception of one. I hope in the case of unity that our mayor says he stands for, he will join the rest of you and support this, because that's what we need. We need unity, we need to respect renters, and we need representation. If you want a little bit of kindness, stay with this. Stay with your guns and support the people, the renters in this community who pay off your landlord's bills. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speakers are Craig Williams, Jennifer Rizzo, Rob Rich.
Hi, my name is Craig Williams. I'm a resident and a tenant advocate. I want to show the City Council this chart. This is a chart of what happened to housing after the 2008 recession, the Great Recession. Housing starts dropped by 80%. Construction jobs were down by 2,500,000 jobs. So that was the first part of the crisis that started. The second part, which people usually aren't aware of, is that because of that, there was a lot of collusion within the industry. The top builders in the country 25 years ago controlled 30% of housing. Now they control over 50%. And the strategy is not to build, to make more profit by not building. It's a supply and demand issue. And so when people talk about, well, you're gonna have rent control and it's gonna de-emphasize investment. Well, in fact, that's not what the builders want. The builders want to limit production in order to maximize profits. And also the third thing is the tech boom. With the tech boom, housing prices went up. Karina Lopez, several occasions said, we created 5 times as many jobs as we did housing. One other point I'd like to make is that, as homeowners, as it turns out, we make our wealth is 40 times what renters' wealth is. So show a little tenderness.
Thank you. Your time has elapsed. The next speakers are Jennifer Rizzo, Rob Rich, Carol Habercross.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Rizzo, and I'm with the California Apartment Association. We respectfully oppose this proposal to enact additional rent control measures in San Leandro. The proposed rent control formula of 65% of CPI or 3%, whichever's lower, is significantly more restrictive than the existing state law. At the first reading, several council members raised concerns about this rent cap formula, and those concerns are valid. As we know, rent control has unintended consequences. When rent caps are set too low, they discourage investment, reduce maintenance and reinvestment, and ultimately tighten the housing supply. That reduced supply harms residents, especially the working families and the seniors, by making rental housing harder to find and more expensive. And there's no evidence that rents in San Leandro are increasing at a rate that warrants this level of government intervention. San Leandro already has a rent review board, and according to their own annual report, it received only 28 inquiries, many of which were just questions and required no follow-up. There were 0 cases, 0 hearings, and the report states, quote, "The city has experienced a decrease in cases since the adoption of the Assembly Bill 1482, thus demonstrating that the current state rent control law is already working here." The proposed rent control ordinance also undermines the San Leandro housing goals. San Leandro fell significantly short of its prior RHNA goals, particularly for very low, low, and moderate income housing. And the city's new housing element emphasizes the preserving of existing housing and incentivizing new development. Yet this ordinance undermines these goals precisely when the supply is needed. So we respectfully ask you to vote no on this costly and ill-timed.
Your time has elapsed. The next 3 speakers are Rob Rich, Carol Habercross, and David Stark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Vice Mayor, members of the council. I'm Rob Rich, and I'm lucky enough to live here in San Leandro.
I'm speaking tonight in support of the rent stabilization ordinance before you. While I was hoping that the first reading would have passed unanimously, I understand and respect the concerns. I am thankful that it passed with only one no vote. I urge each of you to vote yes on the second reading tonight, and then review its impacts carefully over the next year. If you decide that there needs to be any tweaks to improve it, please make them at that time. It's been a long road leading to tonight, yet more work remains. Enacting just cause protections and revisiting our mobile home park rent stabilization ordinance. I've been reflecting on how we arrived at this moment. A quarter century ago, the council created what turned out to be a toothless rent review board, followed about a decade ago by a tenant relocation ordinance. The majority decided that was enough. And then a corporate landlord purchased a local mobile home park, jacking up rents and kicking out long-term low-income residents. An octogenarian, John Bush, decided enough was enough. He made what John Lewis calls good trouble. Initiating a campaign of nonviolent civil disobedience, he was evicted, arrested, and jailed. Along the way, he inspired many who worked on both this and the mobile home park ordinance, including folks like Ginny Madsen and Carol Habercross. On this day, I'm thankful for John Bush's courage, vision, and sacrifice, for the diverse coalition of renters, including mobile home park renters, community organizations like the Big Tent, and ordinary residents who've pushed this issue forward. I'm thankful for the work of staff. I'm especially thankful for your leadership. Tonight, I'm respectfully requesting that you approve the second reading of this ordinance.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Carol Habercross, David Stark, and Chris Longoria.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor and staff. This is a very emotional time, I think, for a lot of us right now, as we are on, this is going to make or break renters, basically. First of all, I want to thank Tom Lau. He's done so much work. He's been there all the way, hard work, steadfast support. So I really want to thank him for all the work you've done. And I respect all the City Council for your votes, and thank you for passing the first reading. And I'm expecting everyone to also vote on the second reading. And I respect you all for your diligence and compassion, always. I have total respect for you all. So I'm a renter that's not covered by this ordinance. However, I care about this for all the renters in San Leandro that need the stability and fairness of this ordinance. I do believe there will be more renters here, but there is fear of retaliation. And I think that's why a lot of renters are not coming to these meetings. These housing providers want our City Council not to pass this ordinance. The housing providers want our city to stay with AB 1482 with a cap of 10% rent increases for renters. They think it's okay to raise the rents that high, 10%. What was the increase in Social Security this year? 2.8%. What is the minimum wage in San Leandro? $16.90 an hour. It's wrong to have this high of a rent hike. That will happen. The rent stabilization ordinance is reasonable, necessary, and justified. It has passed the first reading.
Your time has elapsed. The next three speakers are David Stark, Chris Longoria, and Bill Espinola.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council and City staff. I'm David Stark, representing the Bay East Association of Realtors. Your vote on this ordinance during the January 12th hearing didn't tell the whole story. It was clear that some council members had and may still have serious concerns about this ordinance. Example, concerns about capping rents at 65% of CPI. Perhaps, after reflecting on it, you also have concerns about unintended consequences. We've been working on this issue for a long time, and I understand that you want to be done with it. However, please be thoughtful. if you know that an ordinance will be approved, and if you know that this ordinance will take effect January 1st, 2027, you have time to be thoughtful. You have time to reconsider the CPI limit. You have time to reconsider a strong and clear exemption for mom and pop housing providers and a clear exemption for single-family homes and condos. You have time to identify a legitimate funding mechanism for this ordinance. You have time to be thoughtful. Please take time to adopt an ordinance that not only feels good to you, but makes sense as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Chris Longoria, Bill Espinola, and Tuan No.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Ms. Cameron, Councilor. I would like to acknowledge the Ohlone people whose territory of Hokkien we occupy. I am a 40-year resident and renter of San Leandro. I am one of thousands of renters here in San Leandro that are also voters. I urge you to vote yes on the second reading of this urgently needed rent ordinance. I recently attended the MLK event as well as a Stephen Taylor dedication. Some of you were in attendance. Gratitude for showing up. Both events had many renters in attendance. They were there to support their children who were performing for us, as well as the youth at San Leandro High Social Justice Academy, who continue to hold it down for our lovely city. A city where kindness matters. The diversity at both events really shows the change of our city, the rich culture that now exists. Our youth are leading us for a better San Leandro as their parents work 2 jobs in order to pay the rent. I want to thank you, our dear relative, Jenny Matson, for her dedication to this rental issue for over a decade. Gratitude, Jenny. I, Chris Urban Res Life Longoria, along with 53 community members that I met at both of those events, whom are renters and who also are afraid of retaliation, that would not show up, but they are supportive. Also, I have the support of the California Native Vote projects. They stand in solidarity with this rent ordinance and an approval of this second reading. I urge you to move forward with this ordinance so that we can move forward.
The next three speakers are Bill Espinola, Tuan No, and Mike McGuire.
Good evening. My name is Bill Espinola. I'm president of the Bay East Association of Realtors, and I'm also a San Leandro resident. My family's been lived in San Leandro for many years. I went to San Leandro High, Bancroft, went through the Halcyon elementary school. Been involved and lived in San Leandro for a long time. I'm also a housing provider, a mom and pop housing provider. Before I got into real estate, I was a blue collar worker. I was in the automotive trades. I was a proud union member, 50 and 46. So not all of us housing providers are what you would say corporate landlords. Last time I was here, I spoke about the 65% CPI. That's not enough. I know rents are high in San Leandro and in the Bay Area. We live in a high-cost area. Cost of maintenance is expensive. As a housing provider, I know what it costs to replace a roof. I know what it costs to have my insurance canceled. Very expensive, and having to go find new insurance. Our housing stock here in San Leandro, 40s and 50s. High maintenance. I mean, it's just the way it is. I would urge you to vote this ordinance down. Let's come back with a more balanced ordinance something that works for the mom and pops as well. So I think we could do better. I hope you guys will consider that. Again, the CPI, I feel is just not enough to keep our properties properly maintained. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Tuan No, Mike McGuire, and Lawrence Abbott.
I have been working with the community over public safety, housing, a number of issues, locally and also countywide. And I've talked to hundreds of regular working immigrants, a lot of blue collars, a lot of Asians who are fearful of retaliation and don't want to appear in a public space in front of government officials. But consistently, the people who immigrated here to provide, many of them provide housing, and I organized them during the eviction moratorium to appear with you by the hundreds and across the county. Many of them do not speak English, yet they provide housing. They don't own the homes. What they do is they save up, borrow from their family for a down payment, and that allowed them to make a monthly mortgage and provide labor that go into the essential service of housing. They're fixing plumbing, one leaky pipe at a time. They're in crawl spaces, fixing and troubleshooting electrical wiring. When it's raining, they're out on the roof. They make sacrifices every weekend, long hour days during weekdays. When there's a plumbing stoppage, they are there to fix it. That's why they have equity, because it's wet labor on weekends, on weekdays, from people who don't speak English. And when you did the eviction moratorium, it was labor theft. When you pass extreme policy, it is labor theft. They cannot keep up with inflation. 65% of inflation means every year, 35% below inflation in perpetuity. When drywall went up and plywood went up 300% during the pandemic. And insurance went up 100%. Yet you decide to pass something so extreme that it takes away labor from the working class, the middle class.
Thank you. Your time has elapsed. The next three speakers are Michael McGuire, Lawrence Abbott, and Kay Lee Figueroa.
I think immigrants get ripped off by landlords a lot more than immigrant landlords get ripped off by anybody. No, well, you're a fucking, excuse me.
Okay.
You're a
everybody stop. Everybody stop.
You're a landlord.
Mike, everybody stop. So it's gotten a little bit chippy in here, right? A little bit of, I hear some chortling on one side and some snappy back on the other side, and we need to keep it professional. Okay, so consider this our first warning. Let's start with you at 2 minutes. So let's get you started again so you can get your cadence and all of that.
Immigrants rent too. They don't only own. And I'd say what we're seeing here tonight is let's come up with any possible excuse to stall this bill that we've been working on for 2 years. Let's pretend we cannot operate a pocket calculator and figure out what 65% of the CPI is. I can show anyone how to do that if it's really a problem. People can calculate rent increases just fine. They just, when there's a limit on it is where their calculator seems to break. A little bit of math here. The 65% figure comes from the percent of the CPI that does not already count housing. You don't want to double count it. You don't want to count the rent increase the housing increase that just happened when you figure out how much it can go up next year as a percent of that. You'd be double counting if you did that. That said, if you want to pick a round number, I'm fine with it. But the 65% is not a mysterious number. It's the non-housing part of the CPI. There is a claim that our rent control is extreme. People who don't want something reasonable to pass, something that just lets people plan their lives like normal people, say, oh my God, it's extreme if you limit anybody anyway in what they would like to do otherwise. Give me just a second here. What we're trying to do is have rents go up at about the same rate as retiree Social Security does. That hardly strikes me as extreme. Extreme would be rolling back rents to where they were before all those rents got jacked up just before the pandemic. And windfall profits were made by landlords. And it would be putting the people evicted then who were current in their rent, but landlords just wanted more back in their apartments. We're not doing anything extreme. We're just trying to keep things steady with inflation.
Thank you. Your time is up. The next three speakers are Lawrence Abbott, Kay Lee Figueroa, and Kathleen Parsons.
Thank you so much. I want to say that so many people have already said exactly what I want to say, so I won't repeat it. But of course, you know that I'm for this rent stabilization. The one thing that I didn't say is to really thank staff. I know staff worked really hard on this, and this will make a huge difference. I appreciate you all so much. Thanks.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Kay Lee Figueroa, Kathleen Parsons, and Vanessa.
Boy, hardly know where to start here. I will start off though with my own one of my own personal stories. Okay, in the last let's look at the last 10 years. In the last 10 years, my rent has gone up $600. In the last 10 years, my Social Security minus my Medicare Part B expenses came to $49. Okay, how am I supposed to keep up with these outrageous rent increases if I didn't also have a pension? I would be homeless because I could not afford the rent with just one or just the other. It's the equivalent of having two jobs, and even though I'm not working, these landlords, and I sent an email to the city. People have said this many times this evening. They get all kinds of tax write-offs. You will see they even get double-dipping tax write-offs where even if they get tax write-offs for their utilities and they pass the costs of that along to the tenants, they get both. What do I get? I get the state gives me a lousy $35 at the end of the year for being a tenant. I mean, you know, what, I could go to Starbucks with that money? I mean, and then these landlords are talking about, oh, you know, it's what they want to do is then criticize the amount of money for a rent registry, but yet they're all willing to spend a ton of money to have recalls on council members that are maybe not enough in their pockets.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Kathleen Parsons, Vanessa, and Tyler Gonzalez.
Hi, I'm kind of in the same situation as the last speaker. Last week, I got my third annual increase of rent, which was the maximum of approximately 7.8%. If I get the one next year, which I assume I will now be spending my entire Social Security check on my rent. Luckily, I have a small pension from UC. However, Medicaid costs went up, not Medicaid, Medicare costs went up this year. And that ate up all but $30 of the 2.8% that they gave us. My insurance premiums went up 150% for my Medicare Advantage plan. It's still very low cost because I have it through the University of California Retirees, but it still went up 150%. In March, I'm facing the increase that PG&E is going to put on everyone because they're now separating the cost of the electricity you use and the cost of generating that electricity. And because I use very little electricity, I'm going to end up paying $24 more, which is what they're going to charge everybody for the generation cost. After hearing some of the speakers tonight, I think what I have decided is that I'm not welcome in San Leandro anymore. because I don't own property and I don't have a family, and I think that it's probably time for me to move, despite the fact that I've lived here since 2009 when I moved down here from Oakland to take care of my mother. And I'm just kind of sad.
Thank you. The next two speakers are Vanessa and Tyler Gonzalez.
If you can move to the side by the mic, there you go. Thank you.
Sorry about that. So I'm not a landlord. I'm actually a resident of San Leandro, for over 20 years. So I come here to speak on behalf of those residents. I cannot be here because we work really hard. We have to come home late to pay for, for our kids. And this program, will require a loan from our general fund that we simply cannot afford. I urge you tonight not to pass the rent stabilization ordinance. Instead, I move that the council table this proposal for at least the next year. Your first moral obligation is to the financial stability of San Leandro. And as it turns out, you cannot provide safe neighborhoods or paved streets with moral stances that ignore the hard math. It's an abdication of your primary duty, which is budget responsibility. The city is currently facing a multi-million-dollar deficit in committing to a general fund loan, which is what the council is planning to use to start this program, is a violation of your duty to maintain fiscal stability until the deficit is closed. I therefore ask that the next year you first prioritize an in-depth fiscal impact report that specifically analyzes the risk to the general fund if the fee revenue proposed underperforms. Second, provide an economic study of the impact that this rapid change will have on the deterioration of available rental housing that could potentially create slum conditions caused by the low caps. I formally request that the council direct the city manager to provide a sustainable forecast before approving new departments, given that the current data is insufficient to prove the program won't drain emergency services, and the city has not met the burden of proof required to justify a more restrictive local ordinance when the existing administrative remedies, rent review board.
Your time has elapsed. The next speaker is Tyler Gonzalez.
Good evening, Mayor Gonzalez and council members. I wanted to thank you guys for your time, as well as the housing providers. My name is Tyler Gonzalez, and I'm a San Leandro resident and a former tenant. I am standing here tonight to urge a no vote on this ordinance because it has shifted from a balanced proposal to one that is mathematically unfeasible. If we look at the initial draft from July 2025, the city originally proposed a flat 5% annual cap and a program where capital improvements allowed a pass-through to tenants. That original ordinance recognized that owners need a predictable 5% to keep up with inflation and a way to recover the cost to keep up with inflation and major repairs. But tonight, you've replaced that with a major cap as low as 0.9%. and no pass-throughs at all. When the cost of concrete, lumber, and labor is rising at 5% or 10%, an $18 rent increase won't even cover a basic service call. This creates a dangerous economic reality. The longer a tenant stays, the less a provider can afford to invest in that unit. Because now that you have banned baking unused increases and eliminated the cost recovery that was in the first draft, the only path to a financial survival is a vacancy. Why would you pass a law that makes a long-term tenant a financial liability? You are creating a deferred maintenance mandate where the math works better to let a unit decay until it's vacant so the rent can finally be reset to market rent. By moving away from the 5% or 65% of CPI or 3% and repair pass-throughs in the original draft, you are ensuring that our aging apartments becomes the slums of tomorrow. Please protect the quality of our housing by rejecting this unsustainable proposal. Please vote no.
Thank you. This concludes our speaker cards in the room, Mayor.
So we will close public comment, and then we'll come back to council members for any clarifying questions, or is there any discussion? We'll just start there. Is there any discussion, anything that folks would like to speak about? So there will be no discussion? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, we'll go to Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez, and thank you, staff, for working on this and all the time that you put in, and for the folks to come out and speak so passionately, for and against. My question is for the city attorney, and I think with regards to our last meeting, the first reading, there was a question asked whether or not if CPI was removed from the first reading, that we would have to go back to a first reading. Was that true?
City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, under state law, if the ordinance on the first reading is altered, then it cannot continue into a second reading. It has to come back for a new first reading.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so by tradition, the mayor always goes last. I promised you that I would explain why I'm opposing what we have here today, and I'm going to do that. So first, thanks to everyone who's come out and talked about the concerns that they have. I have proposed through time various ways that I think could address the challenges that we face. In particular, I've looked for income testing as a method. I've also discussed with the city attorney and with council how we might be able to address the specific condition that seniors face. And big picture, without going into the detailed advice, it's you can't and you can't. So without, when I see it in other cities where I see housing projects that are dedicated to certain groups of certain ages, when I see housing that's dedicated to certain sexual orientation, I wonder how it is that we cannot design a process that does address protected groups like seniors. But that's neither here nor there, because today that's not the choice in front of us. The second thing is that I ran for mayor on a promise of balance. I was very clear, and if voters don't want that, if the landlords are unhappy with me or if the renters are unhappy with me, that's fine. I won't be mayor. But I ran on a platform of balance. The state has a 10% cap. And as I listened to the different arguments and saw the evolution, I remained focused on trying to find a solution that didn't rely on the state. And in fact, I proposed a 50% cut on what operates in the state of California. And as I'll talk about at the end of this, that was actually supported by some of our most progressive individuals in the city. And so it's interesting to see how this discussion has changed through time. I have heard that housing supply or housing rents, et cetera, the housing market doesn't comport to economics. There have been a number of public speakers who have come here and said that, and I simply disagree with that. Extensive studies in economics, all of my training, all of my life experience says that initially you might be able to fool the system, but through time, the basics of supply and demand always work. At the U.S. Mayor's Conference this last week, we spoke specifically about the primary cause of housing challenges in the United States, and it's all about supply. Knowing that from the very beginning, I was very supportive of San Leandro's efforts to become a pro-housing city by designation. I've been highly supportive of housing. but I also recognize the need to compromise, and that in the long run, what we need more housing in the city of San Leandro. We don't need to create economic uncertainty for potential investors in our city. That, are we a pro-business city or not a pro-business city? And so it's very important to me that we come across with a balanced piece of legislation that will not be characterized as extreme. Lack of data. So we've had a number of public speakers today and in the past that support this legislation who have said we lack data, and that's why we need to do this. But for me, it's just the opposite. And that's specifically why I proposed and the council approved a rent registry, so that we can get the data on which groups are experiencing what rent increases. One of the things that I've heard over and over and over and over is that primarily for existing tenants that are paying their rent, landlords endeavor to specifically keep those rents highly moderated in terms of the rent increase. As a young economist back in Boston, I didn't understand that because I thought, well, it's all about profit maximization. But what I heard from a landlady was very simple. A good tenant that pays rent is far more valuable than a new tenant that may or may not pay rent. And so having access to the data that tells us what it is that the rent increases are for existing tenants, that's really important, and that's why I led with that proposal. We then came to this concept. We had many people tell us, well, it's all about evictions, that when people don't pay their rent, they're going to get evicted. Well, that's the primary cause. It's not because the rent is too high. The evictions in Alameda County Superior Court are driven by non-payment of rent. Not you're $20 short, you're $50 short, you're $100 short. It's non-payment of rent. And that was exacerbated by the eviction moratorium. I'm going to continue and wrap up because I saved my time from last time. As I promised, there is not a connection. We have not seen the data that shows a connection between the rent increases, the rents in San Leandro, and that as a cause for homelessness. So I can't agree with what the language is in the resolution. Based on my experience in the point-in-time count a while back, and my point-in-time experience this time, I do not believe that it is the rents in San Leandro that are causing homelessness. There are many other causes, and we need to address those, but it is not the rents that are being charged. In the end, this does not increase housing supply. That's what will lower rents. Berkeley experiences as they've built new housing. That new housing has been expensive. It's been nice. Certain groups of people have moved into that housing, decreasing the demand for the older housing stock, and that has moderated rents in Berkeley. So housing supply does work. I am concerned that this is a taking, that this is a regulatory taking. It is so extreme in nature that flat out I view that as a real legal risk. And my job is, as a fiduciary, I need to be mindful of that risk to the city. Why do I think that it's extreme? I called it extreme last time. Why do I think that it's extreme? I think that any regulation that says you can't even charge inflationary increases, you can't help out tenants by not increasing their rent this year, just do it next year and take that extra and apply it to next year as you help them out with a difficult time right now in the absence of banking. No capital pass-through. You have to go to a hearing and you have to have someone who's not involved in the industry potentially make a determination whether what you're doing is reasonable. Those sorts of things are very difficult, particularly in a world where we don't really define fair return other than to say, if you have a profit and loss statement and you're making a profit, we're going to assume that that's a fair rate of return, even if by objective evidence that's not the case. In the end, the thing that I find, I guess, most compelling or disturbing, I don't know what to call it, is that a number of advocates have before identified that something like a 5% was quite reasonable. I heard let's do 3% plus inflation from a tenant advocate. We also had a email from a tenant advocate who literally wrote to us, 5% is reasonable because we have cost pass-throughs. That's why it's reasonable. But what's happened here is that as the number of votes for extreme rent control have increased, then the position of the advocates has changed. And so the same people who said that 5% was reasonable then say, oh, guess what? It's not reasonable. That's political power, and that doesn't bother me. That's the reality if people have different opinions. But what I want to be clear about is that that's not based on data. It's not based on an analysis. It's based on what's the lowest number that we can get with the most votes. And so with that, I struggle because I think that what I proposed initially was a good compromise. It lowered the state cap by 50%. It actually increased the visibility to data by implementing a rent registry so that we can make an informed choice. The current approach costs us millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. What the City Council voted for in its priority session was to give teeth, the most number of votes, was to give teeth to the rent registry. If we had just given teeth to that rent registry to make it binding and impose a 5% cap, we could do this a lot more inexpensively and get the data to see if we need to make further adjustments. So that's why I'm opposing this tonight. Councilmember Bowen.
I apologize for going after you. I realized that I had made a commitment to some constituents to share some of their perspective that I wanted to get across. And I recognize that my colleagues on this council, we have been having this conversation for a very long time. I really want to call out Councilmember Renes, Selena Renes. I remember we spoke in depth about this when she first got on the council as a passion of hers and how we could work together to try to further this. And this was the first meeting I sat on rules, was to discuss this ordinance that had been sitting in rules for some time. And then I recognized that this has been a long time coming. And this decision is hard for everybody, as I think all decisions that we make on this council, because we are really making decisions about trade-offs of how the things that we pass as policy affect human lives. And what I want to share, that I told a resident that I wanted to share, he's a housing provider in San Leandro, a small housing provider, and he just wanted to say, sometimes in this process, and I recognize Tamil for, the outreach and staff that they've done on this for a long time, but there is a real feeling, whether or not it's when people join in on the conversation, but that it can feel adversarial on both sides, and just to recognize that the humanity in all of the parties involved. People own the homes that others are renting, and people are renting the homes that others own. And it's really basic, but I think that that's a really important piece of it. And so the only other thing I will say about this is the two things that I had asked for throughout our Rules Committee meetings and at the last meeting. The implementation piece is really important, and the outreach and education piece is really important. So for all of the impacted stakeholders, we've talked over the last 2 years about many of the examples from Berkeley to Long Beach to Hollywood about ways that they educate and provide information to both the landlords and to renters. And then the second piece of that, and obviously to do with language as well, because we do have such a diverse population, but also that second piece about the ordinance coming back after a year of implementation to understand whether or not it is effective, and what some of the consequences or impacts are intended or not. And then I know staff had mentioned that it's already embedded into the ordinance, but I will send over some measurables that are included in the ordinance that I want to make sure that we get data on afterwards, so that we can make ensure that this policy is effective and addresses many of the concerns that people do have.
Councilmember Bolt
I'd like to move this item.
and Councilmember Aguilar.
I'll second.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, please vote.
All votes are in. The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no. Mayor Gonzalez voting no.
At this point in time, we'll move to item 10B, and we've got Chief Information Technology Officer Michael Seiner to introduce the item. Okay, given the length of the presentation, why don't we take our break right now? We're at the 2-hour mark, and then we will come back. So we will take a break for 10 minutes. So in about a minute, we are going to proceed. If we can take the discussions outside, we will continue with our business here in 1 minute. Thank you. Okay, we are coming out of recess and we're going to continue with item 10B. We've got presentation by Chief Information Technology Officer Michael Seiner.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Tonight's update I'll be providing is on Project Elevate. This is the city's multi-year effort to modernize our core internal systems. These are systems that support payroll, human resources, finance, budgeting, and reporting across all city departments. You might have also heard us refer to this project as Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP. We also call it the Workday project sometimes because Workday is our main software vendor. Here's how I'll walk through tonight's update. I'll start with the goals of Project Elevate and why this investment is needed. Then I'll talk about what the community can expect, who's doing the work, where we are today, and briefly touch on budget and a consultant amendment at the end. And then I'll close with how we are managing this project overall. A note on the consultant amendment, I'll start out just so everybody knows we're not asking for any funding related to that additional funding. It's within the overall project budget. Okay, so Project Elevate goals. 3 simple goals: modernize, improve, and strengthen. We're modernizing the systems that support city operations. We're improving accuracy, reliability, and data quality. And ultimately, we're strengthening the foundation that supports services to the community. These systems may be at times invisible to residents in the community, but they directly influence how reliable city operations are and how efficiently staff can respond to community needs. So why is this investment needed? The city's core internal systems were implemented over 20 years ago. They were designed for a very different time, when paper forms, manual approvals, and disconnected systems were common. Over time, vendor support has become limited, and staff have had to rely more and more on manual workarounds to keep things running. That increases staff effort, staff time, and operational risk as well. In addition, limited integration between HR, payroll, and finance constrains reporting, analysis, and the city's ability to adapt. This investment's about addressing those underlying challenges before they turn into major service issues. So what is the city investing in? In response, the city is investing in a modern integrated ERP platform. This platform brings HR, payroll, and finance together into a single connected system, allowing for a standardized process aligned with best practices. It also includes significant improvements in data and reporting. So we're not just replacing software, we're redesigning how work is done. So what can the community and staff expect today? Expectations have changed significantly over the last decade. In 2026, today's workforce and community expect routine tasks to be completed digitally, not through paper forms, mail, or manual follow-ups. For example, employees expect to change direct deposit information online instead of filling out paper forms. And many workflows are expected to be handled on mobile devices as well. These efficiencies benefit the entire community through stronger service capacity, better use of staff time, and improved transparency and reporting. So this slide has a lot. It's our city project team. This doesn't really represent everybody who's working on the project. The highlights leadership and accountability. A lot of people involved beyond this even. So at the executive level, Assistant City Manager Michael Ewan serves as our project sponsor. He helps ensure alignment with city priorities and supporting timely decisions, especially when trade-offs or escalations are needed. Our human resources and finance directors are the primary business owners of this system. They define the requirements, lead key functional decisions, and are accountable for ensuring that the solution supports city operations. From an IT and delivery standpoint, CTO, myself, and our project manager, Reggie John, and the project management team coordinate overall program across the systems, also across vendors, all the technical dependencies, including integrations, data conversion, and security. Change management and training leadership, that group focuses on preparing staff, supporting adoption, and making sure people are ready to work in the new system, not just on day one, but throughout the lifetime of the system. It's also important to note this project includes dedicated full-time staff assigned to the program, as well as many additional SMEs or subject matter experts that contribute. So that's the city side. We also have a very robust partner project team. So we're supported by several partners, each with a very clearly defined role. Workday is the software provider. Cognizant is the primary implementation consultant. Barry Dunn is a consultant that has been with us since the early days of this project in 2021. We'll talk about them with the amendment at the end. But they provide independent project oversight, risk management, and change management support. Their role is to help city validate progress, surface issues early, and maintain alignment across all parties. We also have Robert Half supporting staff needs where specialized expertise or additional capacity is required. And Cognitive, not to be confused with Cognizant, they provide specialized help on payroll. Can-Am's another software provider that's related to cashiering and payments. And finally, this multi-partner approach reflects the scale and complexity of the program, allows the city to bring in the right expertise at the right time. Okay, I'm going to go through a few slides on a roadmap. One slide how we got here, and then the next where we're going. This project, the key to this side, this project did not start with implementation. It began several years ago with needs assessment and planning, followed by a formal RFP, vendor selection, and contract negotiations. Implementation began in October 2024 after all of the initial groundwork was completed. And since then, the focus has been on planning, design, configuration, and testing. So where we're headed, looking forward, 2026 is focused on continued testing. The continued testing is taking place with the human resources, human capital management, and payroll. We're also working on finance configurations, and then moving into testing for the finance pieces, and then training and readiness. Based on what we know today, the project is trending toward a July 2026 citywide operational transition. We use that word, operational transition. Sometimes we say go live, but operational transition is a phrase that kind of insinuates that the work does not end at go live. This is a continual improvement process, but we will be using this system for a long time, and so the work isn't going to end at go live. We are on target for this execution against that July 2026 date. The roadmap is designed to ensure a stable citywide transition with HR, payroll, and core financial operations already at go live. Next slide is a little bit of a deeper dive into our current status. This shows three things: what's largely complete, what we are actively working on, and what comes next. Because the natural question right now at this time is, how far along are we really? And, especially with the items that are still in progress. So for HR and payroll, foundational configuration is largely complete, and most testing is complete. It's a big step, payroll being the most complicated, complex aspect of any government ERP solution. Payroll is the primary remaining functional area for testing. We're in what's called parallel payroll testing right now, where we test payroll in parallel with our existing system. We're using real data to validate real-world scenarios, and payroll is actually in those final stages of testing as we work towards full accuracy. And just a note on payroll, it's one of those areas where their accuracy approaching 100% is needed. Committing to 100% accuracy on anything is a difficult thing to do, but the way we like to explain it is we need to approach 100% accuracy with payroll, which is different than any other technology system. That kind of accuracy usually isn't needed. You can go live with 95% and then perfect over time. Is a reasonable solution with a lot of technology, not with payroll. So for finance, configuration and design are actively underway, progressing as expected for this phase. This work is moving through what we call structured confirmation sessions and validation checkpoints. So overall, based on the milestones completed and testing currently underway, the project is tracking in line where we want to be, where we expect to be at this point in the schedule. Having said that, the July remains the target. There are 4 watch items that we came up with that still could affect timing. So those things that we're paying very close attention to are payroll testing, finishing and achieving the accuracy we're looking for. Financial testing, so we'll be moving out of confirmation sessions into unit testing and end-to-end testing for finance. And then resource capacity and potential for operational disruptions are all things that we worry about with a project like this to try to keep it on track. These are all tracked regularly and managed through a testing and readiness plan. This slide shows some highlights of our change management and training tasks. Shows our Elevate Central, which opened in August 2025. This is we're very proud of our space. It's been very nice. The team loves it. It's great for training, change management. It's big bonus to have a space where everybody can work and collaborate and train together. On the right, you can see our departmental champions doing user experience training in December. These champions are beyond the original project team. In each department, we have champions that are helping with the project and promoting the project as well. And then there's a little picture of our Project Elevate intranet site, our SharePoint site. Upcoming activities, we have in-person and Teams training, we're developing training videos and job aids, and One thing to note about our Elevate Central, we are going to staff that for the go live or operational transition. So it will be a place where everybody can come. All right, I'm running a little bit behind. I'll speed it up here. Project budget. All the work we've been discussing, configuration, design, testing, training, change management, and transition requires disciplined planning and funding. This slide shows the total budget council approved and how we're tracking across software implementation services, consulting, training, and other project costs. Second table shows actual city staff labor costs for 24, 25, 26. We include this for transparency because this is a big internal effort across HR, finance, IT, and other departments. So it's a real part of the cost here. Key takeaway is that we may remain within the approved multi-year budget and have sufficient capacity to complete the remaining work and support the transition to operation. One important clarification, when you see remaining balances, work's not ending in July. Some of the things, that's just the operational transition point. Software subscriptions extend beyond that and are covered in the project budget for 2027 as well. All right. Coming out of budget view, the practical takeaway is that we still have meaningful funding to finish the work with approximately $3.3 million remaining. We can maintain continuity through Go Live and the stabilization period. That remaining capacity is intentional and supports final testing cycles, readiness activities, post-go live activities, and the oversight needed to make testing-driven decisions as we approach the transition. So next steps. The action before council tonight is to approve an amendment to the Barry Dunn contract in the amount of $98,800. It extends support through December 31st, 2026, covering go live and post go live activities. And it's fully funded from the ERP budget already approved by council, and no additional appropriation is requested. Just a couple notes on Barry Dunn and their role. We're working off an original contract with them from 2021. They started as an advisory partner when we first started investigating this, and then we used them to support. They did a great job on our ERP planning, RFP development, vendor selection, and contract negotiations. And they're currently providing independent oversight on the tail end of that contract from 4 years ago. And this amendment is to keep them going through the go live and beyond. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
So thank you for your presentation. I had to use the word presentation without focusing on action items. So just to clarify, in case there's any confusion, this is an action item. So we'll proceed to questions first, and then we'll take public comment. Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez, and thank you, Michael, for the great presentation. I know this is something that we've been advocating for a while. I don't have any other comment, but I'd like to move item 10B.
Okay, we'll get to that in just a little bit. Any other questions at this time? Seeing none, let's take, okay, Councilmember Bolt.
Yes, when you said moving towards 100%, is there a threshold that you say, okay, we're good moving towards 100%, or is it strictly just, I understand the concept, like you can never be 100% and that would be really hard, but I also do struggle with the vague moving toward, you could be at 70 and now you're at 72, hey, we're moving towards 100%.
Yeah, just 72 is not
good. Okay, that's a start.
When we're talking about moving towards 100%, we're talking in the 99s, you know.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I figured that much, but I needed to ask.
Yeah, if we have a handful of errors that we have to correct in payroll, it's very difficult to implement any kind of solution without dealing with one error. But if we have to deal with a handful, that may be something that we have to deal with, but we don't want dozens of errors.
At this point in time, we'll take public comment on this item.
Mayor, we have not received any comment cards and there are no hands raised online.
So we'll close public comment. Any further discussion? Councilmember Acevedo, please.
Yes, I would like to second 10B.
Okay, so we've got I will accept the prior motion from Councilmember Aguilar with a second from Councilmember Acevedo. Seeing no further discussion, please vote.
All votes are in. The motion passes unanimously.
So moving to item 10C. This is to adopt a resolution to call for a special municipal election in June of this year with respect to the district-based elections that we have talked about before. Acting City Clerk Sarah Bunting, Madam Clerk, will present here for a few minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Sarah Bunting, Acting City Clerk for the City of San Leandro. The item before you this evening calls for a special municipal election to place a measure on the ballot in June 2026. The item implements prior City Council direction from 2025 to transition to district-based elections for council members through a voter-approved charter amendment. The resolution before you this evening accomplishes several items. It calls for the special election for the purpose of submitting the proposed charter amendment to the voters. It requests the Alameda County Services to consolidate and conduct the election. It provides the ballot measure question and the city attorney's impartial analysis. And it establishes the procedures and timelines for submitting written arguments in support of or opposition to the measure, including authorizing the mayor or the vice mayor or other council members to draft arguments. Following adoption of the resolution, information about submitting measure arguments will be posted on the city's website. There are sufficient funds budgeted for the special election, which we anticipate will be approximately $500,000. If approved by the voters, this change will update the city charter so that the November 2026 election is the first with the new voting system in place. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay, having had lots of discussion on this before, I'm actually going to take public comment on this item first.
Mayor, we have not received any comment cards. There's one hand raised on Zoom.
Please proceed online.
The first speaker is Douglas Spalding.
Thanks, City Clerk. Thank you for your presentation. I'm so happy to see this coming forward, and I hope that it's approved and goes to election in June, and that we are able to have our first district elections in a very long time, if ever, in November. It is a matter of state law. It is a matter of equity. I know there's, the romantic feelings some have for our form of government where you represent a district, but you're elected by all the members and whatnot. And I think that San Leandro will continue to have that character. I believe, even though these will be district elections, that the council people that we elect in the future will continue to represent the city as a whole. I'm not at all worried about fiefdoms or people, gang piling or, stacking up against the poor district over here or over there. So bathing in the good feelings of item 10A, I hope that you will also pass this item 10C. Thank you very much. And thanks to Robert Bulatow for making it happen. Bye.
Thank you. Mayor, there are no further hands raised online.
So we'll close public comment.
Hi.
Councilmember Acevedo, please.
I would like to move item 10C to adopt a resolution to call for a special municipal election to be held June 2nd, 2026 for submitting to the voters a proposed charter amendment measure.
And do we have a second? Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I would second.
Okay. I've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes are in. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, moving to item 11. Have we had any submissions?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Yes, we have had 2 submissions from Councilmember Simon that he would like to share.
I have 2. The first submission is, let's see here. I believe that we have a major flaw in our ethics and our discipline policies. Ethics standards are principles and values that guide moral behavior, defining what is considered right or wrong conduct for individuals and organizations promoting integrity, fairness, and trust. I do have a concern, and I would like to add this to the 3/7/26 council retreat that would prohibit the accuser from voting on the accused in the ethics and discipline policies. The accuser should not judge the accused. That's a fundamental tenet of justice. That is, a fair trial requires an impartial judge and jury, free from personal bias or stake in the income, to ensure evidence is weighed objectively. That's my first item. My second item is, first I'd like to give a shout out to staff on their excellent job on the Stephen Taylor Sanctity of Life Pavilion. It's very beautiful work that they've done, especially with the limited budget that they had. There's a lot of planning and community outreach that happened up front that took away quite a bit of budget. So there were a few things that were left out. So I'd like to propose some enhancements to the Stephen Taylor Sanctity of Life Pavilion, and would like to add this to the 3/7/26 council retreat. That would include stage street art, which would be essentially painted on the stage where the Justice for Stephen Taylor and San Leandro High School group does many of their events. And there's some similar art that's at the Albany Bowl in Albany, and there's local artists that do this. It's really beautiful art that recognize people that have lost their lives. Not just Stephen Taylor, but there's even 3 San Leandro High School students that I understand have lost their life in the past 10 years. So there's others that we need to recognize in our community, and I think that would be a beautiful way to recognize them and cost effective from the actual construction. Not construction, the painting would be cost effective, but there would be some staff time, of course. I would like for us to consider that, as well as some signage, additional signage to describe a bit more about the life of Stephen Taylor, what the city has went through, what we've accomplished to make our city a better place. Those are my 2. Thank you.
Thank you. That would be it. Okay, so we'll move to item number 12, City Council reports, calendar, and announcements. Yes. You have one? Please proceed.
I didn't submit an item, but I was wondering when is the last day to submit items for consideration for the March planning retreat? Is that?
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Councilmember, I was actually working on my email to all of you today. The last day would be February 16th, which is our last council meeting before the packet for February 7th. I'm sorry, for the March 7th retreat goes out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item number 12. Councilmember Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to flag, I know staff has been in communication with Stop Waste. At our last meeting on January 28th, we had another presentation on a proposed regulatory fee that would add For a single family home, 30 cents per account per month, so less than $40 a month. Multifamily would be $1.10, commercial would be $1.10, and debris boxes would be 25 cents per cubic yard brown call collection. And this is just to cover some of the regulatory work that Stop Waste has to do. It was passed by the board and will be on second reading consent for our next meeting. But I know that Stop Waste is going to work to ensure education and outreach around the fee, and but the presentation is very thorough, and I'm happy to share that with the rest of the boards, the rest of the council, so that they know, because it will be an additional cost, albeit a smaller cost, but still something that is going to impact families or homes and businesses. Secondly, I attended the Cal Cities Community Services Policy Committee meeting. I was appointed to the policy committee by the Cal Cities president, and I've been wanting to go on that policy committee for a long time, and we actually had a really robust conversation about the work plan for the year and the policy work that Cal Cities wants to do, and just wanted to share that the focus is on childcare, youth and family services, parks and rec, and senior services. And one of the interesting things that we actually ended up doing, because housing and homelessness is so much part of all of the work around community services, we actually removed it as a priority and then embedded it underneath each of the other areas, so that you were working with to refocus some of the policy work on areas that were not often uplifted, but to also still include the housing and homelessness. The last thing, the other thing I wanted to share is that the president of the National League of Cities, I just received an email, did appoint me to the Human Development Committee, so along the same lines, community services, and I'll attend that first meeting next month. And then I think at the end of last meeting, I had, and really appreciate, and I don't know if it was or something already the mayor had been meaning to do, but obviously recognizing Renee Good and what happened. And it's so sad that since that meeting, we have yet another person that has been murdered by ICE, and so much of what is going on. And I know that there is a lot of activity right now in preparation for the Super Bowl, because it has been established that ICE will also be here. And just wanted to let the community know that one of the best things they could do is reach out to other members of the community in their neighborhood, because I can guarantee that there are neighbors that are actively working to find ways to organize and be of service. And so to try to plug in, whether it's through the schools or through the neighborhood association, or if you want to reach out to me, there is proactive activity, and it's something that is definitely on top of people's mind going into this weekend.
At this point, we'll go to Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I attended the ribbon cutting for the Stephen Taylor Memorial. It was a great event, long overdue. There were so many people there. I stayed afterwards to listen to the San Leandro, the Social Justice Academy do performances, but I was extremely disappointed in the fact that Council Member Simon was unable to participate, since he was the one who actually spearheaded and brought this idea forth, and not being able to speak at that event. I seen some email exchanges and just wanted to have him express his freedom to speak as a council member. I'm trying to understand why he was not allowed to do so during that time. I also like to recognize what is happening all over the world with ICE coming to our various states and targeting these major cities. And Councilmember Bowen had talked about what happened in Minneapolis and the lives that have been lost, and a lot of the folks that are being kidnapped and taken into these so-called camps and being held against their will, being kidnapped. And there's a woman who was taken in the city of Atlanta, where I grew up, over this past weekend. And to have folks, ICE come in and do that and kidnap these folks, it's just, they need to stay out of our neighborhoods. They need to stay out of our towns. And I know Super Bowl weekend is coming on Sunday, so we need to make sure we're vigilant and have folks have access to resources to help protect them, to have any questions that they may have to reach out to the city or to our council members. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Viveros Walton.
Thank you. I wanted to just, I wanted to confirm, although I had sent an email to the clerk, that I will be absent from next Tuesday's meeting. I have a work commitment in Sacramento, and I will not be able to join remotely. So I will be absent from next Tuesday's meeting. And just a note to the public, next week, the meeting is on a Tuesday, not on a Monday, correct? Yes,
Correct.
so just FYI. I also attended the SLEA board meeting and wanted to update both the council and the community that we are currently searching for a new executive director for SLEA, and we're in the process of interviewing candidates and doing some of that vetting, so hopefully we'll have some news soon. I also attended the Stephen Taylor Sanctity of Life event last weekend. I want to thank staff for both staff that kind of brought this vision to life, also the community that envisioned this. And I know that it was a labor of love for many, many people involved. And it was a very touching event, and it was very, very well done. Appreciate staff's diligence and attention to detail that morning. And that is it for now. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no others, I'll make my announcements first. February 17th will be our date for submissions because of the delay of the meeting date. I also want to remind folks in the city of San Leandro that we have the Gleaning program as part of our sustainability effort. That's harvesting fruit from trees here in the city of San Leandro. We need to continue to have more volunteers to help with those picking efforts. Great opportunity for Girl Scout troops, youth groups, etc., to just get out there and harvest fruit that can go directly to the food banks, food pantries here in the city of San Leandro. Also attended the Stephen Taylor Sanctity of Life Park. I will clarify for the record, since there seems to be a misunderstanding, that we do have a protocol for who speaks at ribbon cuttings, and that is the mayor and the council member from the district. As a matter of courtesy, I asked Councilmember Simon to cut the ribbon, and so as you'll see in the photos, he was literally the person who cut the ribbon as a sign of respect for his efforts, bringing those efforts forward. Participated in the point in time count. Very powerful experience meeting with unhoused residents. Our particular zone was south of the senior center down to the Ball Theater and over to the Union Pacific Railroad tracks. Had the opportunity to work with city staff conducting interviews, and grateful for all the people that were involved, including Madam Clerk. Thank you for your efforts in supporting that. We've got just an FYI, Alameda County Transportation Commission that I sit on and that Councilmember Bowen represents, Supervisor Tamon. There will be work on San Leandro Railroad crossings as part of the Rail Safety Improvement Program, and that will be happening in the first half of this year, unless there's some pivoting. So just be aware, start putting it in your mind that there will be a weekend similar to what happened last year or the year before, where a major intersection will be shut down so that the entire rail can be replaced and upgrades to the signal arms, etc., take place. And then the last thing that I'd offer is that I'm grateful to the residents of San Leandro for sending me to the U.S. Mayor's Conference to represent you. A lot was learned in this session. One of the more powerful sessions was a leadership development session where we sat in with Army cadets. And we took the wisdom of what they're learning at West Point and combined it with the lived experience of mayors across the country to trade ideas about leadership, leadership development, and alternative models of leadership. So that was quite nice. There were other sessions that proved very useful, and I think as the city manager will attest, I was sending texts and emails and just probing on how we are doing certain things. It was nice to see continued focus on AI, continued to focus on security, hearing from mayors in the state of Minnesota, about what's happening on the ground and hearing that in an unfiltered form, not on X, not on Facebook, not in CNN or MSNBC or Fox, but hearing it directly from the people that are experiencing those concerns. That has led to some outreach to both city attorney and city manager as we continue to explore scenarios about how we will handle things here in the city of San Leandro should things evolve in certain directions that would be undesirable. Significant attention was paid to continued evolutions in technology, particularly the impact of data centers, and exploring how different cities are approaching the benefits and challenges posed by data centers. And I think that it's important to recognize that there's a balance. In a city like San Leandro that has significant electricity supply connected to historical production, industrial production, there may be an opportunity to avail ourselves of data centers and data center expansion. Had an excellent opportunity to meet with our state senators and to see their commitment in particular around housing production and specific commitment to making sure that there are additional controls placed to ensure that constitutional liberties in the United States are protected. The last thing that I'll end with is we have a variety of guest speakers, and one of the more interesting ones was Trae Young from NBA basketball, right? He played for the Hawks. I think he's been traded to the Wizards recently. And he had a telling quote: "If you're doing it right, you're going to get it from both sides." And so I'm very grateful for the insight that came from him and from others as they kind of help guide us as we make our decisions. With all that being said, I will say that as I was driving out to the airport, one of the things that I saw as we moved past the VA was a memorial that had been built to ICU nurse Pretty. Very powerful. In the snow, flowers, and just acknowledgement of the tragedy. So what I'd like to do is end our meeting tonight in honor of ICU nurse Pretty. If you would take a moment of 10 seconds of silence. So it is 9:47 and we are adjourned.